All right. Welcome to episode 43 of the Embodied Business Inspired Brain podcast. And of course, you will be listening to Anne Bishop here and also Chantal Lopez. And we are really thrilled to share this with you. This has been brewing for some time, which is this concept of pricing in your business and its intersection with your nervous system. But before we dive into that, we would love to always step into what's in progress, what's in process. So still just sharing a little bit about, a little deeper inside the life of two women business owners working together and working apart and balancing all that we do in our lives and our business. All right, Chantal, would you like to go first or should I hop in today?
No, I think you should pass the baton to me because that's what I always do to you. I always make you go first. What's most relevant is, as we've been making some shifts and changes, I have been appreciating something that you said recently, which was that we've just taken so much time to build our relationship in a really thoughtful, strategic way, right? We have done so much work to understand each other, to we have embedded our relationship and our business with the nervous system language. And I think it's been a language that's helped us to have more compassion for each other, to enter into hard conversations, to celebrate and expand joy with each other. And I just have been really thinking about the value of that and how most people, I think, often don't have that. They don't know how to build that. Or if you have that, maybe you are not leveraging it, right? Or you take it for granted. So I think I've just been having some ruminations around the strength that is a through line of strength in our business and our relationship. And I think it's given me a sense of we are, even when there are times when, things are difficult or we're experiencing, growing pains, and we can lean on that. We can find steadiness and security in that. And that makes me incredibly hopeful. And also does this thing that we talked about in the nervous system work, which is that acknowledgement. That recognition and acknowledgement gives me just enough space to pause and zoom out and have a different perspective, right? I have a little bit of a more objective perspective, as it were. And it allows me to shift my gaze a bit toward what's exciting and what is working and what's going well, rather than just following that continuum of potential dysregulation. So I've just really been appreciating that and remembering that, really leaning into that as our business is not just these pieces. This is interesting, actually, something to think about in our nervous system business and leadership map that we created, which is we have 7 areas that we take entrepreneurs and leaders through. An 8th area could be internal relationships. Mm-hmm. Because I really think that's a key piece. So I'm just having an epiphany moment, as I sometimes do. We might just have to change our assessment. But that's what I've been thinking about.
I love that. I love how radical, what if your work was nourishing and the relationships that you had at your work, as challenges come up, because they do, the nervous system work is not about ignoring or being in la la land and challenges don't happen. It's just how do you manage them? And as you were talking, I just think you're talking about intentionality. And for me, I think the structure of the nervous system has allowed me, I guess, to feel safe in expressing my emotions or leaning into how do I create positive relationships in business and in life. For me, the structure, just having a structure is incredibly regulating. And knowing where behaviors are fitting on that for my own behaviors, if I'm seeing other behaviors. So you just got me thinking about that. And I'd love to share what's in progress and what's in process for me. I would say I am really leaning into the excitement of a trip that I'll be taking this year with my family. It is the 4th year. I think I'm kind of addicted to repeat trips. And I should definitely, I mean, I love to do new things too, but I think for this season in life, my season, I have young children or middle, I guess they're barely young anymore.
Youngish.
Yeah, they're youngish children. And that consistency for this season in my life is very good. I think for me, as I'm in that parent and caretaking role, because it allows me to get excited about something with them that we've already experienced before, that we can talk about and think about. And I think makes me think about this study that I read once about happiness. And I think it said one of the best ways to be happy is to have something within about 2 months that you're planning to do. Something positive. And we've spoken about this before, I think, in our private, with our private clients and coaching and things like that. But I am experiencing that myself right now. And so I'm getting quite excited about the trip. So
what's the trip?
I can't
think of it.
So this will be, goodness, I think it'll be the 3rd or 4th year we're going to Gualala Redwood State Park.
Yeah, camping with all the families, right?
Yes, a bunch of families from a school that my children go to. And man, I think also like it was the first time kind of post-COVID we had gotten out and we're with a bunch of families and it just was like the sweetest experience and fun and like I would say sympathetic, like it got me sure it was like relaxing and vengeful and parasympathetic, but there were also experiences that were really exciting and kind of like pushed me and were like adventurous. And so it was sort of all of that. So
yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Oh yeah. I love that. Yeah. That's so great. I mean, that's just how my whole life works.
I know. You're slowly pulling me that way. I know.
I have to have something to look forward to. I don't know if I've ever shared this, and I want us to get to this topic that we're going to be exploring today. But I remember even as a kid, I must have been, oh gosh, probably still in elementary school, verging on middle school. But I remember I would wake up and I would not even open my eyes. And the first thing I would ask myself is, what do I have to look forward to today? I would be like, it's going to dictate how I maneuver, like how I get out of bed, how I enter the day is like, is there something rad happening at school today? Or am I going on a field trip? Is there some like a sports event that I'm participating? I would, but I'm like that in my life. I'm like, what is it that I'm moving toward that I'm looking forward to? What's in the future that I can sink my teeth into and, start to plan. And so anyway, I feel like I've just always been that way.
I love that. Wonderful.
But you're looking forward to something. Let's get to it, man. You've got some really cool shit brewing. And
oh, well, thank you.
I'm looking forward to sharing that with everybody. So
wonderful. So this has been something I've been working with for quite some time. I received a licensure with Pricing Overhaul with a Pricing Overhaul. The woman who created it, her name is Erin Haig, and was about a 7-month process for me. And I'm now in the licensure, and it's something that I'm very excited to be offering to those clients within the small business world or coaching and consulting world. And it has allowed me to think a lot about pricing. And I'd love to share some things, a couple of statistics. Like, first of all, the majority of clients we work with are women, although not exclusively. And we know that at least within the United States, most women are still paid less than every man per dollar. And most women entrepreneurs, actually, we undercharge for our services around 28%. So that is a high margin and something that, really adds up over time. And I've thought a lot about this, like, why do we as women do that? And part of me actually thinks that it could be related to the fact that so much of our labor is unpaid. So, caretaking labor is unpaid. Domestic labor is generally unpaid unless you're outsourcing it. And so there's sort of this domain in our lives. If you've taken on that role, maybe you don't have that role. Maybe you have a different role if you're with a partner. And, you're not doing the majority of the work. And so to me, I think that, why is that? Why is that a thing? And I think that could be a reason is because we're already used to, or we sort of give a lot away for free. And that's a challenge for some people who take a more caretaking role or domestic role and then also run a business. I wanted to first off share a story about an experience that I've had with raising prices in my business or overhauling prices. Because when you overhaul your prices, it doesn't always mean that you are going to raise them. Sometimes you might not raise a price. Sometimes a price is just where it should be. Or maybe the real goal in raising pricing through the method that I'm teaching in the Pricing Overhaul Method is that you raise your prices so you can get to a place where you pay yourself a consistent salary starting at least $60K a year, which is essentially $5K a month. And then on top of that, you earn up to a 30% profit. Most people, however, though, desire to make more than $60K. That is just the bottom range. So I'm just sharing that with you all. A lot of people really like to go for $100K a year or $10,000 a month, which would be, $120K a year in salary. And after paying all of your expenses in your business, plus a 10, 20, or 30% profit. And that is the goal of the program that I can help you all work with. But what I realized in working so closely with Chantel is that there are times when I have experienced receiving pricing information within my career working with coaches. And I want to share that story. So, because maybe you've had this experience too. So way back when I worked with a coaching program and they overhauled my prices or, redid my prices. This was not with Erin Haig. This was with another program. And it was very great. It was wonderful. However, some of the prices that they gave me, for example, within my Pilates studio, they really, really raised my semi-private prices up. And they said, well, this is what you need to do to reach the margin. And I totally intellectually understood that. However, I couldn't embody it. I was too dysregulated to share those prices to my clients. I really struggled with that. I didn't struggle with selling privates and when I raised them. So it's kind of interesting. Like it kind of sometimes depends on the offer or what it is. And the excuse that I had was, well, everybody else in town has a higher volume. I only had like 4 reformers max. Sometimes I had 3 when we were in COVID lockdown and doing 6 feet of spacing and stuff. But prior to
having
that,
sessions on the ceiling, on the roof.
Yeah, that was insane. But prior to that, it had been 4 reformers. And, my story was, well, and sometimes what clients would tell us is like, well, why would I pay, I don't know, $235 per month for 4 semi-private reformers if I can pay, $99 a month and join the reformer class with 10 reformers down the road, right? Why would I come here? And so I would always sort of pitch this offer of like, well, it's smaller, you get higher value, our teachers here are so good. I would, speak to that. But at the end of the day, I always did have a little bit of like, well, yeah, like I am struggling to sell this price at that much, at that higher rate. And we totally had clients and they were great. And some people totally paid it, but that was still a common objection. And what I found is that there was a part of me that didn't, of course, I intellectually understood it, but to really convey excitement and truth and energy behind like a sales process or your offer, there has to be an embodiment. Like you have to feel it in your cells. And what I realized is that what one of the things that truly needs to happen is you have to up level your offers, right? And so how can you add more value to your offer? How can you add more so that people feel that payment is really worth it? And so I think, like, for me, that was the gap that I struggled with. And I did offer more, but I didn't offer more in a way that I think I could feel in my bones. And so that's one of the ways in which you have to tune into your nervous system and tune into your body and say, well, why are these prices not working? Why are they not connecting? And I just did not have any of the nervous system practices at my disposal then.
Yeah.
And what I love about this concept of up leveling your offers is, like, it pushes you to be a better practitioner, right? It pushes you to offer better services. It pushes you to get even better at what you do, or train your team to be even better at what you do. And I think when you present this idea to people, the common feedback is, well, I'll price myself out, and then no one can afford my services, or no one wants my services, and I don't want to only sell to rich people, right? That tends to be the argument that you hear. And the great thing is there's a solution to that argument. The solution to that argument, which is one thing that we implemented, is at the studio, or you can implement within your coaching programs or your consulting work, is you can have a pay what you can model. You can create extended payment plans. You can specifically reach out to communities that may never be able to afford your services, even if you offered a discount. Because I feel like that is usually a reason for why an owner might say, I'm just not going to raise my prices, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so...
yeah, they don't want to exclude people. They want the work to be accessible.
Right. However, you can still do that, but it has to be a little bit more structured, because what I think tends to happen is you just slightly keep your prices depressed. And then lots of people who could afford your higher prices are basically getting a discount. Right?
Yeah.
And then that keeps you from being able to truly make a profit in your business. Because what happens when small businesses make a profit is they can donate to local charities.
You can serve more people.
You can serve more people. You can pay your staff better, right?
Yeah.
It's not, because I think it's, at the end of the day, I think it comes down to a sense of feeling uncomfortable for asking for more money, and whether that uncomfortableness is emerging from, is my offer good enough? If it's emerging, am I good enough? Right? Like, what is coming up? And I think that is where the nervous system work can support us as business owners, and stepping into that awareness so that we can tease apart our emotions when we receive coaching information about, changing prices or changing your business model or things like that. Because clients do really, as a business owner, I did really struggle with, well, I want to do things right, and I want to do what my coach says, but it's not fully working, right? And being able to lean in, or it's not working at the level that I want it to work at, right? At that high level.
Yeah. Something that's coming up for me that I hadn't thought about quite in this way, which is in the nervous system work that we teach, we're really trying to get people to familiarize themselves and to anchor into their state rather than their story. And because it's easier to change your state, which then will dictate your story, than the other way around. So the story of, if I overcharge, if I charge this much, I'm going to price myself out of the market. If I charge this much, am I really offering that much value? If I charge this much, then I'm making my services inaccessible. It's like all of that is a story shift. Like, I can think of the flip side to every one of those stories But when you have a dysregulated nervous system, it's like you can't change the story. Like no matter how much you intellectualize it, it still comes out. You're still like, well, it costs this much. And you're pitching it, but you're pitching it from a dysregulated nervous system. And what we know is our nervous systems change each other, right? Like, so you do have to embody that quality, like whatever the other story is. Like I was thinking, the other story is like, if you could regulate your nervous system around this higher price point, the other story that emerges is I am a badass. Like, and you all of a sudden you're like, yes, I am so good at what I do. And I do it differently and I do it uniquely and I can talk about it this way. And then all of a sudden you feel that energy rising up, right? You're more in that ventral state. You have that safe, ventral connection umbrella, and you can expand your creativity and the way you think about things. And all of a sudden, you're literally communicating to another nervous system, another human being, that the price is actually nothing. The price is no big deal. What you need to look at is how good the work is that I offer. And the prices mean anything, right? But that's a big story shift for people. And you can't really shift the story unless you shift the state. And that's the work, right? That's the work that we're in, is how do you shift the state so you can shift the story? Like if you're always struggling to make ends meet, you might be serving a lower, an audience that it doesn't have as much resources, but you're never then able to serve more people, right? Like the more you charge, the more people you can serve. I mean, but that's a very different story than I don't want to exclude all of the people who are, teachers and, social workers. And, we have all this complex, we have a lot of meaning making around money stuff. So I'm just thinking about it from that perspective of how do you can change your pricing, but that's not enough. You've got to change the story around your pricing and around your worth and around your offer. And if you can't change the story, it might not work. And to change the story, you've got to change your state. So, just following that in a like kind of disillusion process, backward to the
No, I
to the
love how
beginning.
you change that, because I think a lot of times we come at this perspective of, well, if I intellectually tell you a news story, then okay, I've told
Then
you
it'll be
that,
fine.
then it'll
Yeah.
be fine. But
Yeah.
I intellectually knew the news story and I still struggled. Or you might still struggle if you because most of our audience is, you're smart, like you get it. It's not that hard to do. Okay, I get the mindset shift, right? I can have this mindset and then I can have that mindset. But our experience, your experience as a business owner is not from your chin up, right? Your experience as an entrepreneur, as a leader, is your entire body. So if your mind is like, but there's this other story, but your body is like screaming, no, I don't trust that story, or I intellectually understand that story, but I haven't shifted my state. So what I would love is for you to sort of share, like, what's an example of someone, like, let's say you got the news from some sort of someone supporting you with your business, or you yourself are just sitting down and you want to change your prices. And you intellectually understand the story. Okay, I'm changing these prices because I need to start making money in my business. Or, gosh, my employees are really asking for raises and I have to figure this out. Or my rent just got raised. Or, inflation, or whatever your reason, right? What's an example of someone listening to say, well, how can I change my state so that my state can match this new mindset or this new story I understand?
Well, I mean, I think one strategy that we use again and again is to invite people to embody the desired state. Like, take time to imagine what it will feel like when you do not have to worry about money. Like if that's the thing, or maybe it's another thing. Like imagine what it will feel like when you're making that 30% margin, profit margin. And that means you can go and develop an entire free program for the women's shelter in your community. Like imagine the ultimate consequence or benefit of raising your price, and like literally put yourself there. Like you have to envision it. You have to feel it. It's like, what does your body feel like? Like, what would the typical day feel like moving around in the world when you're like, my business is making 30% profit after paying payroll and all expenses, and I'm about to roll out this amazing program to, women who've been sex trafficked. It's like you have to feel into that. I think, like that's an opportunity we often invite people into. Is like you can't just think about the dollars because the dollars don't mean anything. You've got to put yourself into a visceral, embodied, emotional container that is that moment where you've done the thing. And I think for me, it's like if we can tap into that, if we can keep drawing, it's like creating a pool of resource for us, right? So if we can draw from that resource, it enables us to, let's just use your example of like, I've raised my prices, I get it, and yet it doesn't feel comfortable. And so you like, okay, I'm going to have this conversation with a new client. I'm going to pitch this pricing offer, this offer that has this new pricing. But how am I going to resource myself in order to fully embody that so that I can feel confident, I can feel sure, I can feel steadfast? It's like I'm going to go into the future and tap into that feeling of 30% profit and this amazing program and the people I'm going to be able to impact, because that's what I can do when I'm charging more. So that would be something that I would just invite people to practice, is put yourself in that future place, feel the goodness of that. And it fuels then moving into this, uncomfortable space where you're stretching yourself. It's a growth edge for sure, I think. And we have to be able to bring more of that ventral, expression in our body. And we can't think our way to that often, like we can't just intellectualize it, but we can visualize it and draw from that experience in the future to fuel us in the moment. That would be my first thought.
Yeah, I love that, because I'm very, I think, driven by thinking of something specific in the future. But I think for me, it's like I have to spend the time in that. I can't just think about it in a cursory way. I have to really like savor that experience and think about it and smell it and, taste it and imagine it. I think that that's very powerful. And, because I find it interesting, because when I look back and I just remember that story, one was very easy for me to charge more for, and one wasn't. And so it's funny how our nervous systems have, these nuanced responses, or it's like, it's not that you can't intellectualize yourself to some behavior change, because
sometimes.
I think you can sometimes, or if for whatever reason it makes sense. Like, sure, I can charge more because maybe there's something inside of you where like, oh, I've been really undercharging for some, maybe training you've been doing or workshops you've been giving. And you're like, fine, I could easily do that. But this thing I can't. And so what I like about the nervous system work is it has allowed me, because back when I was going through this experience, I didn't have these tools, but to really say, well, why was I having an easy experience here and not, what's holding me, why was the intellectual shift possible for me in this realm, but not in this realm. And so I think having that perspective, And what I'd like to invite you as you're listening to this is, if you think about the offers that you have or the services that you create or the consulting that you do or how you price your products or services, it's like, think of the things that are easy, where you would feel like, oh, this is an easy place for me to raise prices. But for that one thing, if there is one thing, or maybe a few things, or maybe everything, what is hard for you to feel like it might be more challenging for you to raise prices on? And then you'd have to, from that perspective, think about, what is that future experience like that Chantel outlined, and have that embodied experience and say, well, remember when you're trying to sell this service or this product or this particular consulting offer, how is that really going to support you in getting to that place down the line? Because as I look back and I remember, I don't think I was, when I would try to sell the prices, I think I'd get into a subtle dysregulated place. And when I was in that dysregulated place, I wasn't able to think about the best way I could offer that.
Sure.
So Gala, a lot of times how you talk about I was less creative. I was less
But you're in a survival state. You're starting to narrow. Yeah, your brain. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're struggling with understanding, well, what prices push me at that growth edge where I notice myself narrowing, that could be where your growth edge is saying, well, if I'm in a place of narrowing with, communicating price changing or just business changing, business structures, you're going from packages to a membership model or some sort of reoccurring revenue model or a retainer of some sort, what is that shift? And so that for sure is a really good way, I think, to, help you as you're listening to this podcast, think about what you can do in your make the shifts for yourself. Because remember, most women in this country are undercharging for, at least in the United States, are undercharging for their services. And so I don't want my daughter and I don't want my granddaughter to undercharge. Because I'm whispering in my ear, in their ears all the time. Although I don't have any, obviously I don't have any grandchildren yet, but I'm constantly whispering in all the little girls' ears, you're worth it, you're worth it. But then am I standing in that? And so.
Yeah. There's something that's coming to mind that's super simple, which is this concept or idea of find, feel, and linger. It's like when you're struggling to really feel confident in the choice, you could make the choice, as Anne said, and we do that a lot of times. We have this fake it until you make it kind of, which is, there's value in that if you do it the right way. I'm a fan of putting the pin in your mouth and faking your smile and activating the nerves around the vagus. There's sometimes that works, but I also really just think it's the strategy, the overcoming strategy can be when you just feel there's hesitancy, you feel there's disconnect, go to that moment where you've already done it, pretend you've already done it and feel it. Find that moment, feel that moment and linger in that moment. So find, feel, and linger. And it's it'll give you the strength, and it will give you, literally what I love about this and what Anne and I always talk about is it's not just change your mind and change your mindset. It's biology. If you find and feel and linger in that moment of the greatness or the joy or the security of that thing in the future, you literally change your physiology. You literally change the ability of your brain to function. And it's from that place that you can be oh, right. Then your mind starts to shift. Then your story starts to change. Then the meaning you're making out of the choice changes. It's this is not just me charging more money. This is me saying, I offer something so incredibly valuable. And there are plenty of people that can afford it. And I'm going to optimize that opportunity because that means I can then serve more people. And that's my goal. And find that feeling feel into it, write it down, talk about it, and then let yourself linger there. And then that becomes the fuel for doing the hard thing. And if it doesn't work, like sometimes there's a misalignment. It's also a way of checks and balance, I feel like. Like if you can't find and feel and linger in something that is really positive and uplifting about the choice you're making, maybe it's not the right choice. And we would just call that intuition, I think, but really it's just an opportunity. Like you're just allowing an opportunity to check in with your biology. And most of the time it will fuel the positive outcome. And sometimes it's like, oh, I'm somehow not connected to this. You're smiling. What's going on in your brain about that?
Well, I'm thinking about how this concept of lingering, because I think that can be like, it's radical to linger. Like how often do we linger? Right. I mean,
right. Don't be lazy. Don't linger.
Yeah. Or just, what's the next 6-second video that I can scroll on, right? Like there's not a lot of lingering within our world, at least certainly not within the digital world, so I find, I love that sense of lingering. And I think I'm going to practice that.
Yeah.
I think, because the lack of linger, because sure, I mean, to me, it kind of brings it from the mindset to the embodiment. Like you can change your mind. And to me, if I would overlay that metaphor, it's like, well, that's what is it? Find, feel. Well, sure, I can find and feel something, but it could be a passing feeling that I'm just sort of thinking about. Yeah. The lingering to me really, I imagine, brings it into, for me, I think when you give that language and that framework, I'm like, okay, that's where that embodiment piece comes.
Yeah. And it's a little bit more neutral than the language we've used in the past of savoring, where savoring feels like there's an imposition to enjoy. Yeah. And this is like, just linger and see what's there.
It'll be a little more objective.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Chantel, for joining me in this episode. And thank you to our listeners. We always invite you to leave a review or subscribe to our channel and wherever you are listening to us.
All right. Thanks, Anne. Looking forward to more conversations about pricing, price for well-being. Stay on the lookout for that, everybody.